You are welcome to Transformation Time with the Samaritan Strategy. We are privileged to have you always with us on this live stream as we go through the lies that Satan has put into our cultures to impoverish us, to enslave us, to take away our dignity as human beings. So for the past week, we've been talking about the ABC of our culture. And that we use the word ABC because anytime we talk about ABC, it talks about something which is so foundational, something that is the roots of our problems. And that has to do with lies or truths. Lies enslaves, as I've said, but truth liberates and sets us free. So when we talk of ABC, we talk about the first principles, elements, rudiments in every area of life. There are first principles. Now, for example, if you want to learn how to read and write, of course, you should learn A, B, C. That is so foundational as far as reading and writing is concerned. You cannot read and write without knowing your A, B, C. The same thing if you want to be a mathematician. The first principles, you have to learn 1, 2, 3. Now, if you don't learn 1, 2, 3, it's just not possible for you to be a mathematician. And if you want to learn how to paint or be a painter, the first things you have to learn are colors. You have to know the different colors that exist. And if you want to learn about music, be a musician, of course, the notes, the do, re, mi, you have to learn that. Now, there are many people who are discussing and talking about nations, but they are not talking about the first elements, the rudiments, the principles, as far as nation building, nation is concerned. Normally, people think when you want to deal with nations, go to the map. Know the name of the country. Know the national anthem of the nation. Or know just where the nation is located on a map. But for every nation, if you want to know their foundation, it has to do with the people. People. That's why we always say people are so important, so significant, that if you don't know people, and yet you want to help them develop, yet you want to really prosper them, then you see you give millions of dollars in assistance in terms of grants and loans, and yet poverty still reigns. If you don't know people and you think people are hungry, so give them food. Yes, you give them food, but hunger multiplies. If you don't know people and you think people are naked, so clothe them. Yes, you give them the clothes, but they become more naked. It is time for us to understand the first element. And again, that is why still my book becomes so important. The roots of human problems, the roots of our problems. You have to understand foundational or roots problems before you start to think about solutions to the problems that nations encounter. If you don't understand the roots, you will always be beating about the bush. It's very important. We are familiar with the concept of foundational principles. And this is so important in our everyday lives. And as I've said, we must learn the primary things before you can bring solutions to issues. The spiritual warfare, systematic impact through cultures. And that is so important because you see Dr. Guylen van Rijn said the systematic view of spiritual warfare see the powers as personal spiritual beings who are actively impacting the socio-economic and political structures of society. Now, that's so true. This quote is filled with profound insight. It is well worth taking a few minutes to reflect on this quote in the light of few questions. What are these spiritual beings impacting? What have they done to cause that impact? What does it mean that they are invading the very fabric of society? How is it that Christian institutions are impacted by the demonic influences? Where do you see this in the Christian institution in your society? You see, the principles and powers are personal spiritual beings. They are not impersonal energy forces like in the Star Wars. The spiritual, that the demonic impact the physical. And the physical means the social, economic, and political structures of a society through culture. There is not only personal evil, but structural, institutional evil. Slavery in England and America was a structural evil. Caste system in Hinduism, and sexism in South America, and female genital mutilation in Africa, in Ghana in particular, are structural evils. These evil institutions are the product of the demons actively impacting the society through culture. And so when you speak against it, people don't accept it. Why? Because it's embedded in the culture. And that's why you see this spiritual warfare systematic impact through culture. These powers has established their rules and regulations that pull cultures away from God. Stoker's mentioned are literally the rudimentary principles, the ABCs of culture. So there are questions. How do authorities rule? How does God rule? Through laws and ordinances. God rules through his laws, physical laws, laws of gravity, and moral laws. Thou shalt not commit adultery. This is why the Great Commission says, Matthew 28 verse 20, teach them to obey all I have commanded them. God's laws are immutable. They cannot be broken like the natural law of gravity and the moral law of adultery. The law is not broken. Man is broken. Satan tries to get us to believe that we can break the law of God without consequences. When the culture of a people believes Satan lies, they are pulled away from God. The consequences are enslavement and poverty. The basic principles of the world are the foundation principles of culture. And so, the powers, as Galen again said, although personal, they are spiritual beings that have invaded the very fabric of society. Thus, even Christian institutions reflect these demonic influences when the powers invade human institutions. The demonic invade society through what? Culture. if the church is not discipling the nations, as we have always said, the nation will disciple the church. Because Christian institutions are best in a cultural context. They will reflect any demonic influences in the culture if they are not actively seeking to be counter-cultural. Now that's so important, I repeat. Because Christian institutions and churches are best in a cultural context. They will reflect any demonic influences in the culture if they are not actively seeking to be counter-cultural. Now, so you see that the foundations for community development, because we are talking about foundational issues now, and the type of foundation you have determine the type of building you have. So what type of society are we building? What type of institutions are we building? Is it based on truth or lies? The foundation for community development is knowledge and truth. For every knowledge, for every society to develop, for every community to develop, for an individual to develop, the foundation is knowledge and truth. And that's what the Bible says, for lack of knowledge, my people perish. You lack knowledge, then something else happens. The foundation for development is knowledge and truth. Think of these elements, principles, as cultural building blocks in most, if not all, cultures in the world. There are some building blocks that are in alignment with biblical truths. These kingdom building blocks are the source of all that is true, moral, and beautiful within any given society. These building blocks, or knowledge and truth, are the foundation for solid community development. We can find such kingdom building blocks in music, in the arts, in science, law, technology, and education. It is very probable that every culture embraces at least some aspect of truth. Any bit of truth found within a culture is to be nurtured, affirmed, and encouraged. However, the foundations for community, for individual, for nations' destruction are ignorance and lies. So the building blocks for a nation's destruction or individual destruction is ignorance and lies. Where people think there's no God. They have all their life to live. There's no life after death. Life is just visible, what you see, material. Life is in a box. Eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow you die. And that's how people see life. See their end. Where people think life is just a stomach and a mouth. So consumerism becomes every day of their lives. That's lies. In all cultures of the world, there exist some counterfeit building blocks introduced by Satan, the father of lies. The counterfeit building blocks are founded on lies. They are the immoral and profane features in any society or culture. Slavery in the United States was founded on the lie that whites were better than blacks. The abuse and subjugation of women by men in many cultures is founded on the lie that men are better than women. The caste system, as I've said, in India, is founded on the lie that people from one group are of greater value and worth than people from another group. These lies or counterfeit building blocks exist in every culture. They represent what the Apostle Paul referred to as hollow, deceptive, weak, and miserable elementary principles. They are to be exposed, opposed, rooted out, and replaced with kingdom building blocks that are based on God's eternal revealed truths. Although each culture is made up of both truths and lies, it is the cultures that have more truths, goodness, and beauty that form societies with greater freedom, justice, and compassion. The cultures with more falsehood, evil, and ugliness produce societies that are more callous, enslaved, and corrupt. It is important for us to understand these problems from the roots to the fruits. And that's why we say ideas have consequences. You have to understand the from the roots to the fruit. And why? Because there are many NGOs, many governmental agencies that are trying to solve problems from the fruit, which doesn't work. So billions of dollars have been used trying to solve problems of sanitation, unemployment, in education, in politics. But so, you cannot solve the problem from the fruit. You can attack the problem from the roots. The fruit tree illustrates that there are consequences associated with living according to false belief systems. To express it more succinctly, ideas have consequences. The Apostle Paul described how fallen men have exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and then described the terrible consequences that resulted from that exchange. These consequences impact individuals and entire nations as they penetrate social institutions, structures, and laws. Truth is the foundation for nations or communities' development, but lies are the foundation for their destruction. E. Stanley Jones, a great missionary statesman to India in the past century, had profound insight on this topic. He said, "We do not break God's laws, but rather we break ourselves against God's laws. God's laws are unbreakable. When we disobey them, we do not end up breaking His laws, but rather we break and injure ourselves and others against His laws." This is profound and this is true. We will examine some other counterfeit building blocks. will say, we are in the likeness of God. He created them. So true. If you don't have the Bible worldview, you'll still be living in a culture where segregation is dominant. Again, men are superior to women. What is the biblical principle? Men and women are both created in the image of God, equal but different. One will lead to the oppression and devaluation of women. Now that is so important. It's a lie. And this lie, you can see it in various places. Where people are so fatalistic. Where people think work is a curse. Where people think men are better than women. And for that one, I've experienced it in many African countries that have taught worldviews. Where women are disrespected, disregarded, and not even valued. Fatalism is one of the biggest lies of Satan. History is something that happens to us. We are poor, and there's nothing we can do about it. What is the truth? The Bible says we are created in God's image. History is not just something that happens to us. We make history. Now, which foundation will build a better society? The kingdom principle says that we're made to make history. So in whatever you do, you can make history. Why? He who is in you is greater. So you can do all things through Christ. Now, that should help you to completely come out from your fatalistic mindset. That, it's not possible. I can't make it. We are poor, and so we can do nothing. We can make, and we can do all things. The kingdom values and principles take you out of that lie. Again, for some, work is a curse. To have money without getting your hands dirty is a status of work for some people. What does the Bible say? Work is dignity. That's why I've written a book. Your work is your worship. Work is worship. God work. He gave man work to do before the fall. What happens when you build a culture on the idea that work is a curse? Or on the idea that work has dignity? You don't think about it. You think work is a curse. Another person also thinks work has dignity. What kind of society would that build? Now it's so important for us to look at these lies. For some, spirits control nature. So it means that you can have life for yourself. The spirit control your destiny. They control your life. They control your protection. They control everything. These are lies. And you see, look at the lies. It brings, impoverishment. And societies where people think corruption is normal. African time, where time is not valued. Now, all these are lies of Satan. One lie, that man is not accountable, responsible for his actions. This lie is found in many Western nations that have been influenced by the naturalistic worldview. In naturalism, there's no God governing the affairs of the universe. A man is left to do as he pleases. If this is true, hedonism and rampant consumerism become the logical approach to life. If we can do whatever we please without fear of ultimate divine judgment or accountability, then we should eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Thus, entertainment has become one of the highest values of many nations in the West and now in many African nations. Now, these things must be looked at very seriously. The lies that evil is triumphant, the lie that man is an animal, and that's what we teach in academic institutions. The lie that some tribes are better than others. So what happens? Look at the wars in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, in Rwanda. Many were fought on that lie. It is only when people come to grips with the kingdom truths that they can really see progress and success. Naturalism and animism both have distorted understanding about the truths. Naturalism allows no room for the notion of absolute truths. All that exists is matter, and energy is a closed cause and effect universe. Truth is whatever we want it to be. Many animistic cultures also consider truth to be unknowable. It is the gods, the powers. To Hinduism, the principle of avir means to worship the gods in ignorance. In this sense, Hindu society actually sees avir, ignorance, or delusion as a... Imagine that. You are a missionary who wants to teach illiterate Hindu people in India how to read so they can access the Bible in their own language. When you begin to understand Hindu culture, it slowly dawns on you that in many parts of the Hindu world, if you encourage the poor to learn to read, you are asking them to sin. Now that's interesting. But that's what cultures do. Another lie in both in naturalism and animistic cultures is that human life is of little value. As a consequence, abortion has become a common practice and is even cherished as a right in naturalistic cultures. Few people speak out for the millions of unborn children sacrificed on the altar of choice. Animism also accords little value to human life. Hinduism, for example, has no rationale for why people in need should be helped. The poor are destined to poverty because of what they did in their past lives. Unlike Christianity, Hinduism does not value individual people or see them as fearful and wonderfully made. Psalm 139 verse 14, in the image of God. Now these are critical. Someone said, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Our society is so sick. Why? Because lies is ruling our world. And so poverty, hunger, evil is dominating our day-to-day life. And we cannot just say it is well when we know our society is profoundly sick. Corruption has taken over. And whom you know is what gives you work or even dignity. We cannot say we are doing church only when the society we live in is so sick because of satanic lies in a culture. And that's why you should look at the growing healthy cultures. You see three trees And we are talking about root issues. The root determines the fruit. The root determines how healthy the tree is. And so you see the first tree, lies dominates the roots. Yes, as I've said, for every culture, there are some truths and some lies. But the development and progress of that society is determined by the amount of truth or lies that culture embraces. Where the culture embraces more lies than the truth, you see, that's the type of development. So the country can be living on oil, gold, manganese, uranium, some of the most expensive minerals, but still the poorest of the nations. And that's what we experience in Africa. So rich in terms of mineral resources. So why? The land is so good, so fertile. Come to Ghana, go to DRC Congo, go to, most of our nations and see how God has blessed our nations. And yet, poverty, hunger, deprivations were the cause. It has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with what we have embraced. Where people embrace more lies, that is the consequences. Where society embraces equal truths and lies, you will see the middle tree. Where in nations where people don't go to church, and yet they have some principles that is aligned to the truths. Hard work, honesty, compassion, love. Yes, you see the tree develop. The amount of truth or lies. And so for an individual or a society or a nation, whenever we are talking about development, development must be seen from the roots. Whether the nation or that community or that tribe or that group of people have embraced more truths or lies. Where lies dominate the culture, the belief systems, the actions of the people. There's poverty and there's hunger. And the lies are the things we know. Dishonesty. We know. Greed. Segregation. Corruption. We know. Laziness. Evil. Pull him down. How do you develop? When people have this sort of mindset. The more truths in the soil, the healthier the tree. The more lies in the soil, the more, stunted the tree. All soil have both truths and lies. No country will have only truths until Christ comes back. A country that has no truth will disintegrate. Where would you place your country? Why? Which way is your country moving? And these are very important things for reflection. The more lies, the greater the poverty. The more truth, the greater the blessings of truth, justice, freedom, peace, compassion, and all that you can think about. And so, if that has not happened, and people are embedded in lies, then we see what we call the envelopment, development continuum. And so, where this, envelopment is as if people have been enveloped and they can never be developed. And development or progress and prosperity seems very far. And it's all because people have embraced more lies. So where there should be light, we see darkness. Where there should be order, there is anarchy. Where there should be civilization, there is barbarism, wickedness. Again, where there should be progress, we see poverty, hunger, deprivations. Where there should be love, we see envy, strife, malice, hatred. Where there should be humility, we see pride, arrogance, fullness. Where there should be development, there is envelopment. We're giving all that is, but still hunger and poverty. So sad. Because of life. And where there should be life, there seems to be death. Young people die from preventable diseases. Lives are crushed. Lives are destroyed. Lives don't matter because of what people eat, because of position. And it is so sad. So the quality of life, broken individuals, families, decreasing population rates, broken churches with no identifiable difference, deteriorating moral basis. As the root, spirit of pilgrims to gain a quality of life was distorted. Cultural shifts to believing there is no God and no moral standards, human rights, without a definite moral framework. And that's why the Bible says it is the truth that sets us free. So you see the living tree. The living tree. United we stand. Where there's unity, there's dignity. Tribes. It doesn't matter where you come from. Like the Bible's kingdom values. Where there's no Greek or Jew, American, European, Japanese, Chinese, and African. Where we don't see ourselves in terms of color, but as one people. That's the living tree. Where men and women are equal but different. Because God created them to be people in his image. Male and female, he created them. That's the truth of the word. It brings and development. Where there's no food for lazy man. Where people cherish hard work, honesty, integrity. Yes, these are the principles that brings progress, prosperity, and development. Where people value time. Time is money. They don't mess up, but stand out to show the God they serve. People are alive not only to work, but to be creative, innovative, develop. They make history. They don't just wait for history to happen to them. It brings development. Where there's servant leadership, not the village chief mentality, where people arrogate to themselves, power, authority, dominate, they rule, but rather serve. You elect a parliamentarian and then he becomes more honorable than you. You elect people and they become more dignified than you, the people who voted them to power. Where honesty, integrity, and faithfulness exists. Where people think, I'm here to be a blessing. They love people as God loves them because they are blessed to bless. Then they can lead that society to development. We want to say that excellence is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of choice. And everyone who value godly and kingdom principles cherish excellence. In everything you do, you choose excellence, not mediocrity, because it is not a matter of chance. It is a choice you have to make. Except for such catastrophic events as war, drought, or flood, physical poverty doesn't just happen. Rather, counterfeit cultural building blocks, such as fatalism, play an important role in determining whether people would suffer from poverty, corruption, or other forms of brokenness. These satanic lies, when they become part of the basic foundation of a culture, eventually become institutionalized into the laws and structures of that society. The inevitable and injustice, lack of respect for human life, and many other cultural ailments. Ultimately, brokenness is rooted in man's sin and rebellion against his creator and in the ongoing work of Satan, who wreaks destruction through his lies and distortion. In the Christian principles, Christians and the elements of culture, truth must always be affirmed, regardless of the consequences. The natural, like the vegetation, the rivers, the sea, must be celebrated. We don't worship. And lies, in whatever form, must be opposed. And when that happens, Christ becomes the all in all. In marriage and family life, Christ is Lord in health issues. Christ is Lord in political and economic issues. Christ should be Lord in education, in science and technology. Christ is Lord in community development, in financial life, in agriculture. Christ is not only Lord in the church, but in every domain of life. And that's what we call a life of coram Deo. We live all life before the face of God. Because the God of faith is the God of reason. The God of science is the God of theology. The God of ethics, the God of business, the God of missions, the God of politics. The God of justice is also the God of evangelism. The God of art and music is also the God of nature. The God of devotional life, the God of community service. The God of the gospel is also the God of bread. All life must be cherished and lived for. So in matters of culture, there are things in the culture that are natural. There are also things in every culture that are lies. We are to affirm and shine as lights on the things that are true. We are to celebrate the beauty and wonder of the natural. But we are to oppose the lies. Culture is the outworking of a people's worldviews. God speaks and created the universe. Man speaks and creates culture. It is the culture that then shapes what God has made, for good or ill, for life or for death. This is by Galen, and it's so true. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "He who passively accepts lies or evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetuate it." That's why we cannot keep our mouth shut. That's why we can't pretend that it is okay. We cannot accept lies or evil because it's an indication that you are part of it. So, what one thing will you do in the next week to address some of these lies you have mentioned? What is one thing your church would do to address this lie? Lies impoverish. But it's not enough just to talk about it. Like how people talk about worldviews and live it. No, we give you options, a choice. What can you do? Someone said, you cannot build a life of greatness on a foundation of lies and deceit. You cannot fulfill your destiny if you keep paying attention to lies from Satan. You cannot. Philippians 2:15 says, so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God. shining like bright light in a world full of crooked and perverse people because of our culture. You shine like stars while offering the good news of the gospel to all around. We sometimes struggle, feel inadequate, and think our light is not enough to make a difference. But stars don't try to be stars. They just are. In Genesis, God brought physical light into our world. And through Jesus, God brings spiritual light into our lives. It is time for us to stand. 1 Peter 1:18. If you know that God paid a ransom to save you from the empty life you inherited from your ancestors, and it was not paid with mere gold or silver, which lose their value. It was the precious blood of Christ, the sinless, spotless Lamb of God. And 1 Peter 2:1-3 says, so get rid of all evil behavior. Be done with all deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Like newborn babies, you must crave pure spiritual milk so that you grow into a full experience of salvation. Cry out for this nourishment now that you have had a taste of the Lord's kindness. God bless you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share these thoughts with you. I know you can be God's agent of transformation as we bring truth to the cultural lives we find ourselves. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.